Current evidence demonstrates humans arrived in Anderson around 12,000 years ago at the end of the last glaciation. Those who came are called the Paleo People. The Paleo people were specialized large game hunters, dependent upon megafauna like the mastodon, woolly mammoth, and other species for their supply of meat for food, bone for tools, and hides for shelter and clothing. The Paleo culture also developed sophisticated toolkit technology for killing and dressing large game. The most important tool of the Paleo people was the stone projectile spear point, which was attached to a wooden shaft. An accessory to the spear was a device called the Atlatl. Constructed from wood or bone, the Atlatl acted as an extension of the throwing arm. This greatly increased velocity and kinetic energy of the spear, allowing the point to penetrate the thickest of hides. Paleo points were razor-sharp and ground at the base. The body was fluted to accommodate hafting. Specimens show quality workmanship and are made out of flint. Different types are the Clovis, High-Low, and Cumberland. The different styles of paleo points show transitions over years of design. These have been found in every county of Indiana. Other tools include blades for dressing game and antlers for knapping flint. The process of making a projectile point required great skill and craftsmanship. First, a block of flint, called a nodule, had to be found. The preferred site for the Paleo people was along the Ohio River, where high-quality Wyandotte flint was plentiful. The nodule would have been struck with a hammerstone to produce large flakes. The points were made by knapping the edges of the flake. Paleo people were constantly on the move, traveling in small bands, following herds of game for survival. Campsites have rarely been discovered by archaeologists because any paleo dwelling was short-term. Any activities located have been near large streams or other water sources. While in camp, the paleo would have made tools, prepared meat, dressed hides, and foraged for other food material. Due to high mobility, the populations were small, and bands consisted of 40 to 60 people. Anderson during the Paleo period was open steppe grassland with pine and spruce forests. Paleo hunters would scout areas that would attract game, such as marshes, ponds, rivers, and mineral springs. These sites offered the best advantage for the hunters, and this is where the highest concentration of points are found today. The Paleo period lasted roughly 2,500 years, not ending abruptly, but slowly transitioning into a stage that saw improved tool technology and more efficient use of the environment. The people took advantage of a diverse variety of big game, fish, birds, and plants as the climate warmed. This is called the Archaic Period, which began roughly 10 to 8,000 years ago. It would last 7,000 years. The warmer climate allowed for more hunting and gathering, which had now become seasonal. The megafauna had died off, so the early archaic people adapted to the change by developing new tools for hunting smaller game. They also created stone tools for cutting wood and grinding wild grain. Campsites were becoming more widely distributed. This allowed trading networks to be established and developed. Copper from northern Michigan and shells from the Atlantic coast, used for beads, are found at archaic sites in Indiana, demonstrating interaction between early archaic peoples. The early archaic people remained nomadic and frequently changed camps for the best hunting opportunities. The camps were small and were only for short-term use. Evidence of campfires have been found containing debris from tool making, along with broken or worn-out tools. No evidence of shelters have been found. They were most likely constructed of poles covered with hide, bark, and grass. Any human remains have been sparse and scattered. However, early archaic tools are common. They are larger than average, manufactured in great numbers, and left at hunting camps in caches for later use. The most common early archaic projectile points found around Anderson are the Thebes and Kirk Corner Notched. These points were made and resharpened using techniques that were difficult to master and would have been taught for generations without any major changes. For example, Thebes points were made by percussion flaking, while Kirk points were made by pressure flaking, the same technique used for resharpening. Making these points required strength and expert craftsmanship. Other tools used in the early archaic period were hammerstones for grinding wild grains and nuts. Hammerstones also would have been used to process venison and berries together as a foodstuff easily preserved and stored for winter. The adze, or primitive axe, was used as a cutting or digging tool. It would be thousands of years before grooved stone axes would come into use. With the extinction of the megafauna, early archaic hunters were forced to fill the void by seeking out much smaller but still viable game. White-tailed deer, elk, and black bear roamed Anderson and provided meat, fur, hides, and bone. They also hunted turkey, squirrel, raccoon, turtle, and drumfish. The emergence of hardwood forests and prairies offered another source of food with acorns, walnuts, chestnuts, hickory nuts, persimmons, wild grain, and berries to supplement the early archaic diet. The Ice Age was now a lost memory. The great beasts that once roamed Anderson were extinct, their bones a mute reminder to the ancient past, perhaps creating legends in ceremony and oral tradition. The landscape of Anderson has changed little since the retreat of the glacier. Today we are enjoying a mild period of interglaciation. Even though we have only had direct influence on the land we call Anderson since the early 19th century, a blink in the eye in geological time, modern human effects on the land itself have been negligible. If the artifacts of modern man were removed and nature allowed to reclaim the land, one would see Anderson as the early archaic people saw it, a wilderness that provided sustenance for nearly 7,000 years.